what I want parents and practitioners to understand is that your microbiome is not just about your gut. Your child's microbiome lays the foundation for their future immune health, brain health, metabolic health, and hormone health. I mean, in fact, the state of their microbiome in the past and currently can set the stage for really an amazingly vibrant and resilient future if we understand how to maintain a healthy and resilient microbiome.
Our guest today on the Presenter Spotlight series is Dr. Elisa Song. Elisa is the founder of Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, an online resource hub for children, families, all about holistic health advice. She has an integrative pediatric practice where she's helped thousands of kids thrive physically, emotionally, and socially with natural and holistic approaches. And with that, let's bring in Elisa. Elisa, thank you so much for joining our Presenter Spotlight series. I'm really looking forward to getting to chat with you today and just kind of going through some questions ahead of our 2025 international gathering, which is titled The Vagus Nerve, A Path to Wellness. You're one of our keynote presenters. You'll be speaking at our conference alongside other folks on the vagus nerve. And so I just wanted to kind of jump right into it and see if you could just share a little bit more about your background and how you ended up in this field of pediatrics.
Yeah, so I am an integrative pediatrician. I have a brick and mortar practice in the San Francisco Bay Area. And in 2016, 15, I kind of had this epiphany that I was really being called to do something more, with my practice. And my practice actually already was an integrative pediatric practice, pediatric functional medicine practice. When I opened in my practice in 2004, it was as an integrated pediatrician. So this has always been near and dear to my heart to look at different modalities. I incorporate homeopathy and acupuncture and essential oils and mind body medicine and, of course, nutrition into my practice. And there was such an increasing need for parents to get this information. As a solo practitioner, there were only so many people I could see, kids I could see in the office. So I started my online educational platform for children and for children, parents, and practitioners called Healthy Kids, Happy Kids. And that brought me to get to know amazing folks like Dr. Porges and other folks in the health and wellness space. And this really, practicing from a more holistic, integrative, root cause approach to this really unacceptable epidemic of pediatric chronic disease is so important for me, not just in my practice, but on a public level, educating parents and practitioners that there is another way. And of course, I'm so excited to be part of the conference this winter because much of that healing and resilience that we need to impart to our children from a mind and a body standpoint is really through the vagus nerve.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm very much looking forward to the conference as well, and I'm excited to hear your presentation. And you touched on a few key words that I'd just like to follow up on: healing, resilience, all that have to do with sort of building that healthy gut microbiome, which of course is sending that information up through the vagus nerve to our brain. Just wondering, what does that look like for you? What does a healthy microbiome mean to you?
Yeah. So, over the years, I've really become more, I guess, well known as a pediatric microbiome expert. And my book, Healthy Kids, Happy Kids, is all about creating a resilient microbiome. But what's really what I want parents and practitioners to understand is that your microbiome is not just about your gut. Your child's microbiome lays the foundation for their future immune health, brain health, metabolic health, and hormone health. I mean, in fact, the state of their microbiome in the past and currently can set the stage for really an amazingly vibrant and resilient future if we understand how to maintain a healthy and resilient microbiome. And part of what I talk about in the book, actually quite a bit of what I talk about, is the gut brain connection. And obviously, as you mentioned, the gut and the brain are connected via the vagus nerve, that amazing two-way information superhighway. And what many people don't realize is that 80 to 90% of the communication actually occurs from your gut to your brain. And the vagus nerve is shuttling all of this information. And so, how we think and how we feel and how we interpret the world around us is often driven by the state of our gut microbiome. Now, many people think of our gut microbiome as all the bugs in our microbiome, and that's a piece of it. That the technically the trillions of microscopic organisms in our gut are our microbiota, and they can be comprised of bacteria, viruses, yeast, even sometimes parasites. And depending on that balance, our microbiota can work for us or not. And what's really interesting with the state of children's gut microbiomes is depending on how their microbiomes are shaped, especially in that first really key 3 to 3.5 years of life, can establish a higher risk for things like allergies, eczema, hay fever, or reduce that risk. And same thing with mental health. We are really in a state of mental health crisis for our children and for our teenagers. And what happens to the microbiome can set the stage for an increased risk of virtually every single mental health concern. Now, that can sound a little frightening to some parents, thinking, oh my gosh, well, how do I then protect my child's microbiome? What if it's already disrupted? The key thing to know is that it's never too late to restore a disrupted microbiome. So when we understand what a healthy balance of beneficial bacteria, beneficial functioning of the bacteria are that actually make most of our neurotransmitters like serotonin, we have so much more power in our hands as parents, and children and teenagers have so much more power in their hands to really take control over how they eat and how they live and how they think, to have a healthy gut microbiome, and in order to have a healthy brain and healthy mental health. I'm all about empowerment and education and just making things really practical and doable.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, what you kind of brought up is the power and the control that folks have over their diet. And I feel like a part of what you're sharing that's so important is that once you decide to make that choice, whether that's kind of moving away from like the junk or processed foods or fast foods that feel good in the moment, because you're kind of saying that, down the line, these things are going to have an impact on your physical and mental health. And I think we sort of knew that, maybe eating a bunch of candy isn't good for you physically, but to actually hear you say like, no, this is actually going to cause, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sort of a ripple effect down the road. What you're choosing to eat over and over and over, day in and day out, is going to affect more than just your long-term physical health, but how you feel, how resilient your body is, your immune system. So I feel like that's huge in terms of just creating that link, between, okay, kind of shifting away from maybe the processed junk foods that taste really good in the moment and moving towards whole foods or healthy foods, what that person decides is healthy for them. And I was just curious what you feel or see some of, in your clients or just in your practice, what sort of a dysfunctional microbiome shows up as, emotionally, physically for those people.
Because the gut microbiome is so inextricably linked to the vagus nerve and to the brain, one thing that I see with a disrupted gut microbiome. So, for instance, there can be some abnormal bacteria in the gut that um, that can release a certain substance, let's call it. It's called endotoxins, or LPS, lipopolysaccharides. And when that LPS gets absorbed into the bloodstream, it can wreak all sorts of havoc, and cause inflammation in the brain, in the joints, wherever they end up. And I've seen time and again, in fact, I have this one little girl. It was astounding, the power of optimizing her gut microbiome for her mental health. She's only 10. She was diagnosed with, I mean, a whole litany of um, acronyms, ODD, OCD, ADHD, PTSD, and she had anxiety and depression, and she'd been on multiple medications without any success, and in fact, too many side effects. So the parents came to me to try to figure out what else could they do. And so the first thing we did was, of course, I spoke about cleaning up the diet and, trying to get sleep in and all the things. But we really took a much closer look at her gut microbiome through some specialized testing, and found that she had a very high level of this LPS because she had really high levels of these abnormal, what are called dysbiotic or disruptive microbes in her gut. And within a month of cleaning up her gut, getting rid of these abnormal, disruptive microbes and mopping up that LPS, mom wrote and said she was a different kid. I mean, less than a month actually, that she felt like her daughter was coming back. And that was so powerful. Now we have to sustain that. And this conference is about the vagus nerve, right? And so what role does the vagus nerve play? Well, we can do these things to correct and balance the gut microbiome, but we need a way for the microbiome to stay healthy. And one of the most important ways to maintain a resilient microbiome is to have a resilient vagus nerve. So part of the healing process for me is always in the moment, during the healing and ongoing, to really give kids tools to engage and optimize their vagus nerve every single day. Because we certainly, every day, all of us, children or adults, have many, many reasons that throw us out of being in a calm, regulated state. And so we have to purposefully and mindfully really get back into that regulated state by engaging the vagus nerve and supporting something called our heart rate variability, which I know we're going to be speaking about in a little bit. But that truly, when we think about how do we not just get kids well, but keep them well, that piece is the vagus nerve.
You mentioned some tools. Would you mind just sharing a few tools that you share with parents for children to support their vagus nerve, their microbiome, daily practices? Anything that comes to mind for you in relation to that?
And here's the thing, what my goal with speaking at the conference is to help parents and kids be really proactive, right? I mean, really before their vagus nerve gets really disrupted, out of whack, and now they're in a state where we have to do a lot more work to help them recover. I would love, for all practitioners and parents to understand, how do we really practice true prevention in that sense, right? And one of the most important tools that we can teach our kids, and we need to also practice ourselves, is really learning how to breathe with our diaphragm. That's also called belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. So, when we think about the autonomic nervous system, which regulates our vagus nerve, there's really not much control we have over it. I know Dr. Porges also refers to it as the automatic nervous system, because when we're in that fight or flight state, we can't tell our heart rate beat faster or beat slower, right? It just automatically happens. It's that response, that nervous system response. However, we have one way that we have a direct access line to our vagus nerve, and that's through our breath. Because simply by breathing fully with our diaphragm, not with our shoulders, by engaging the breath, we can actually start to regulate our heart rate, kind of down regulate that sympathetic nervous system response, and improve heart rate variability. And so, what I talk to kids and parents about in the office, whenever they come in, is this is one of the most important things we can do, because we don't want just necessarily a one-off. Of course, we can, do some journaling and gratitude practices and walk in nature, all of which will help support our vagus nerve. But we want something that we can do anywhere, anytime, all day long to counteract all of these kind of sympathetic forces that are coming at us, to really put us into that fight or flight state. And so learning how to do that, and also kids I mean, we have to breathe anyway all the time. So we might as well learn how to breathe fully with our belly so that we're engaging our vagus nerve. And when kids are anxious, let's say before an exam or before a soccer tournament, or, if they've just read some really mean text from a friend, they can immediately just slow down their breath and do some diaphragmatic breathing without anybody having to know what they're doing. I mean, there are other tools like tapping and many other tools, but they would have to. Not all kids will feel in the moment, I can use this because all my friends are around me, right? And so if they just slow down the breath, that's something they can do anytime for themselves.
Yeah, that's such a great point that it can just kind of happen naturally for them. It doesn't have to be a big thing. And I'm wondering just from, the microbiome standpoint, when you are doing that diaphragmatic breathing, that deep belly breathing, how does that impact your digestion, if at all, or the absorption of some of these nutrients that you would be getting from fruits and vegetables, other healthy foods?
Love that question, because here's the thing. In some studies, they found, now the ideal is to have an optimal heart rate variability, a higher heart rate variability. There's no one right size fits all, right? We each have our own unique heart rate variability that's right for us, just like we all have our own unique microbiome that's right for us. But we do know that when we improve our heart rate variability, through joy or mindfulness or whatever other exercises, there are studies in kids that have found that optimizing heart rate variability can improve gut microbiota composition and function independent of diet, which is fascinating. Now, I'm not saying you can eat all the junk that you want to, right? And just, think that you can meditate your way out of it. But it's a tool that we can give our kids. And especially for parents who are really, really picky eaters who are saying, I don't know that if I can get my kids to put anything, even remotely green on their plate right now, just yet. Well, that's okay. We can work on heart rate variability, and that will still help improve the microbiome. And when we look at the microbiome and vagus nerve functioning, these two really are the foundations for optimal current and future health. So whichever way you go at it, whether you're working first on the microbiome to by cleaning up the diet, getting rid of all the ultra processed foods, that will actually have an effect on improving your heart rate variability and vagus nerve tone. Or on the flip side, if you start working on vagal tone first, that will improve your microbiome. And so it's this beautiful symmetry there.
Hmm. I did not know that. That's so interesting. Thank you for sharing. And I'm just curious about the when you are supporting your gut microbiome, and I know that folks have probably heard about certain foods to eat that can support that gut microbiome beforehand. But just curious, any foods that you really like or your kids like that you know is going to be healthy for their microbiome and therefore their physical and mental health.
Yeah, and when we're thinking about, okay, what foods are healthiest for your microbiome, there are also studies that have found different foods can impact your heart rate variability too. So and there's so much crossover, right? In my book, I talk about microbiome champions. So your three Fs: fiber, phytonutrients, which is color. I mean, I know it's a pH, but it sounds like an F. So I remember. So fiber, phytonutrients, and fermented foods. Okay, so trying to just kind of get that memory in. And when we think about fiber, it is not just fruits and vegetables. We have to really expand what we think about as the rainbow, for our gut. And that includes a lot of the tan and whites, meaning your legumes, your nuts and seeds, your beans, your lentils, your whole grains. All of those pack, a ton of fiber per bite. And so making sure that we get those in, because we know that fiber, phytonutrients, which is all the different colors that natural, plant-based foods can come in, and fermented foods all support a healthy gut microbiome composition, meaning the types of organisms that want to live there and call in all the friendly microorganisms to live in your gut, and also their function. It helps them do all the things that they're supposed to do for us, like making our B vitamins and making neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, or making something called short chain fatty acids for us. We cannot live without our microbiome. In fact, our microbiome really supports and sustains our life in a way that, if we don't take care of our microbiome, they can't take care of us. And so we will not be as healthy as we can be. And what's interesting too is many of those same foods, the diet, there are foods that have been shown to harm the gut microbiome and also heart rate variability. And no surprise, that includes all the artificial dyes and too much sugar and all the ultra processed junk and that is rampant in kids and adults diets, frankly, right? On the flip side, a more Mediterranean plant-based diet, that's what we need for our microbiome, that also has been shown to improve heart rate variability. So if we're
Mm.
trying to get in more, like legumes, awesome. There's a big gap, a big fiber gap, that even the World Health Organization recognizes throughout the world. But in the United States, only 5%, or I should say less than 5% of US kids and adults actually meet their daily recommended fiber requirements.
Mm.
And the US fiber requirements are actually much lower than in some other countries, right? And this is even counting, the quote healthiest of eaters. We may get, salads every day, but we're not necessarily thinking, oh, let's throw some pumpkin seeds on there. Let's get some garbanzo beans on there. Let's get some more, why don't we throw in some quinoa, toasted quinoa to make it crunchy. So all these different ways that we can think about just upping our fiber and our phytonutrient game. And then fermented foods are amazing because a lot of people think fermented foods have benefit because of the probiotic content. That's only a part of the benefit. So remember all of those compounds we spoke about that probiotics make for us, our microbiome makes for us. Well, in those fermented foods, they're chock full of all of those what are called postbiotics, those fermented byproducts. And that's where really a lot of the magic of fermented foods lies for us. There are even studies looking at giving fermented foods to young women with social anxiety with significant improvement just by eating fermented foods.
Mm.
No other interventions, right? And
Mm.
so, what's the impact? It's benefiting the microbiome, it's benefiting neurotransmitter production, it's benefiting the vagus nerve.
So interesting to hear you say that study about social anxiety, just in terms of, sort of catering towards your gut microbiome and making all of those little creatures feel safer, feel better, in turn makes you feel safer and feel better. And, before we head to just our last question or two about the conference, I'm just wondering if you could just share a little bit about what polyvagal theory means to you, in terms of your work or your personal life, how it's impacted you.
Well, I love everything about what Dr. Porges is bringing to the world. And I work with many, many kids with special needs on the autism spectrum, with PANS, PANDAS, ADHD, anxiety. I mean, like I said, that this crisis of neurodevelopmental and neuropsychiatric disorders is really heartbreaking in our children and in our teenagers, and really, helping them to identify um, how to think about their vagus nerve and how to think about what got them to this state that they're stuck in is really important. It helps to empower kids to know and teens to know, okay, this is where I'm stuck and this is why. We always have to teach kids the why. This is why we're working on your vagus nerve. We're working on, not just giving you this medication to mask some symptoms. We want to get to the root cause to get you unstuck, right? I mean, that really is the key. And then again, for me as a pediatrician, seeing kids from the moment that they're born, I really want to help inform children and parents on ways to create a resilient microbiome and a resilient vagus nerve in the first place so they don't get stuck.
Yeah, sort of that preventive model, trying to really get ahead of any potential problems that might come down the line by just starting with the foundations, right?
Yeah.
Um, Well, thank you so much, Elisa. I just one last question for you about the conference specifically. Just wondering what you're looking forward to most about our gathering in October, and what you hope guests take away from your presentation.
I'm just so excited to meet everyone. I mean, I've never been to a conference dedicated solely to the vagus nerve, and I just love it. I love it. I mean, I know when I'm chair of pediatric education for A4M, which is one of actually probably the largest um, uh, integrative and functional medicine practitioner conference in the world. And I had the honor of inviting Dr. Porges to come as a speaker at our very first one. It was very important for me to have him there so that pediatric practitioners could really understand how important this work is, that it's not just something to um, give lip service to is, oh, that's, fine body medicine. I'll do it when I have time. It's like, no, this is really and truly one of the most important things that we can do, for our kids and for ourselves. And so just learning from everyone, I would love all the um, parents and practitioners and participants um, to leave my talk with more hope, right? I'm always about hope. And really, when we think about the state of children's health nowadays, it can be really discouraging. But, just really having participants leave with actionable steps that they can take even the very next day or as soon as they get home to help support their kids and themselves, no matter what state of health they're in.
I love that. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your words and your insights here. And yeah, thanks again, Elisa. I'm looking forward to seeing you in October at our conference.
Yeah, thank you.